The Environmental Working Group, one of the most widely referenced consumer safety databases in the United States, evaluated 326 dish soaps and gave roughly 65% of them a D or an F for safety. That means about 2 out of every 3 dish soaps sitting on American store shelves right now contain ingredients that an independent research organization considers a meaningful risk to your health, to the environment, or to both. And here is the part most people never think about. There is no federal law in the United States that requires cleaning product manufacturers to list every ingredient on the label. Not on the bottle, not on their website, not even when you call and ask. The FDA regulates cosmetics. The USDA regulates food. But dish soap? Dish soap falls into a regulatory gap where the Federal Trade Commission oversees labeling but does not require full ingredient disclosure. That means a company can put a picture of a lemon and the word natural on the front of the bottle while the actual formula inside contains compounds linked to cancer, hormone disruption, and nerve damage. And you would have no way of knowing unless you went looking for it. Think about what that means for a product you use every single day. The average American household washes dishes roughly 5 times a week. Over the course of a year, that is over 250 sessions of skin contact with whatever chemicals are in that bottle. Your hands are soaking in it. Residues are drying on your plates, your forks, the cups your kids drink from. And the regulatory framework governing what goes into that bottle has not been meaningfully updated in decades. The European Union bans or restricts over 1,300 chemicals in personal care and cleaning products. The United States restricts fewer than a dozen. That gap is not a matter of opinion. It is a documented difference in regulatory philosophy between 2 of the largest consumer markets on Earth. If this is the kind of deep dive you value, hit like and subscribe so you never miss one. It genuinely helps more people find videos like this. To understand what is actually in your dish soap, you need to understand how modern cleaning products work, because most of them are not soap at all. Real soap, in the chemical sense, is what you get when you combine a fat or an oil with an alkali like lye. That reaction, called saponification, produces a compound that lifts grease off surfaces. It is the same basic process that has been used for thousands of years. But the brightly colored liquid sitting next to your kitchen sink is almost certainly not real soap. It is a synthetic detergent, a carefully engineered blend of petrochemical surfactants, foaming agents, preservatives, dyes, and fragrances designed in a lab to produce a specific color, a specific smell, a specific amount of bubbles, and a specific price point. Think of it like the difference between fresh squeezed orange juice and an orange-flavored drink. One is the thing itself. The other is a manufactured product designed to remind you of the thing. The cleaning part of dish soap is actually a small fraction of the formula. Most of what you are paying for is marketing chemistry, the ingredients that make the product look, smell, and feel like what you expect dish soap to look, smell, and feel like. The most common surfactant in conventional dish soap is sodium lauryl sulfate, or SLES. It is the ingredient responsible for those thick, satisfying suds. But SLES is made through a manufacturing process called ethoxylation, which is essentially a chemical reaction that smooths out a harsher compound to make it gentler on skin. The problem is that ethoxylation produces a byproduct called 1,4-dioxane. The EPA classifies 1,4. The National Toxicology Program has flagged it as a reasonably anticipated carcinogen. And here is the critical detail. 1,004-dioxane never appears on any ingredient label because it is not an added ingredient. It is a contaminant left behind by the manufacturing process, like sawdust on a finished piece of furniture. The FDA found 1,004-dioxane in nearly half of the personal care products it tested, and dish soap uses the same surfactant families. You will never see it listed. You will never know it is there unless you actively look for products that avoid ethoxylated ingredients entirely. Then there is the word fragrance on the label. Under current U.S. regulations, fragrance formulas are protected as trade secrets. A manufacturer can list the single word fragrance, and that one word can represent a proprietary blend of dozens, sometimes hundreds, of individual chemicals, including phthalates. Phthalates are endocrine disruptors, meaning they interfere with your hormonal system. Research from the Endocrine Society has linked phthalate exposure to reproductive harm, developmental problems in children, and increased cancer risk. Every time you squeeze that soap onto a sponge, your skin absorbs a small amount. Every time you rinse a plate, a residue stays behind. Those exposures are tiny in isolation, but they happen 3, 4, 5 times a day, every day, for years. So which brands carry the most concerning ingredient profiles? Dawn is the most popular dish soap in America, and it earned a D rating from the EWG. Its formula contains sodium lauryl sulfate with its associated 1004-dioxane contamination risk, undisclosed fragrance, synthetic dyes, and methylisothiazolinone, a preservative known to cause allergic reactions that the European Union has restricted in leave-on cosmetics because the evidence of harm was strong enough for regulators to act. Dawn's marketing has built enormous goodwill through its wildlife rescue campaigns, showing oil-covered ducks being gently washed with the blue liquid. That campaign speaks to the product's cleaning power, which is real. But cleaning power and ingredient safety are two completely different conversations. Palmolive, the second most popular brand, contains a nearly identical chemical lineup across most of its product range. The EWG rates several Palmolive varieties between D and F, which means the brand you have probably been buying since childhood carries the same concerns as its main competitor. The one notable exception is their Pure and Clear line, which strips out the fragrance and dyes and earns an A rating, proof that the same company is perfectly capable of making a cleaner product when it chooses to. The fact that Palmolive already makes an A-rated formula, but still sells the D and F versions as its flagship products, tells you everything about how these companies think about ingredient choices. It is not a capability problem. It is a priority problem. Ajax earns an F from the EWG. Its triple action formula contains DMDM hydantoin, a preservative that works by slowly releasing formaldehyde. The World Health Organization classifies formaldehyde as a known human carcinogen. Ajax also contains methylchloroisothiazolinone, another preservative in the same chemical family as the one flagged in Dawn, plus synthetic colorants FD and C Yellow 5 and Red 40, both derived from petroleum. Simple Green Naturals is particularly worth flagging because the name itself implies safety. It earned an F from the EWG. The formula contains sodium borate, a naturally occurring mineral that nonetheless carries high concern for developmental and reproductive harm, and cocamide DEA, a modified coconut oil derivative classified as a possible carcinogen. The word naturals on the label is doing heavy lifting that the ingredients do not support. Joy, a Procter & Gamble brand like Dawn, carries a similar surfactant and preservative profile. Great Value, Walmart's store brand dish soap, and Gain round out the list with formulas built around the same cost-optimized chemical architecture: ethoxylated surfactants, synthetic fragrance, preservatives, and dyes. The pattern across all 7 brands is remarkably consistent. The same handful of concerning ingredients appear again and again because they are cheap, effective, and not restricted by any federal regulation. And that brings us to the brands that have figured out how to clean dishes without that chemical baggage. Dr. Bronner's Sal Soothes earns an A rating from the EWG, the highest possible score. It is a concentrated formula, which means a single 32-ounce bottle, diluted properly, lasts months, making the per-use cost competitive with conventional brands despite the higher shelf price. The formula uses sodium lauryl sulfate, which is a different compound than sodium lauryl sulfate. The distinction matters because SLS is not ethoxylated, which means it does not carry the 1004-dioxane contamination risk. It also contains cocoa betaine, a plant-derived surfactant, and fir needle oil for scent instead of undisclosed fragrance blends. No synthetic preservatives, no dyes. In head-to-head grease-cutting tests, reviewers consistently rank it among the best-performing dish soaps on the market, which is striking for a product with a 9-ingredient formula competing against products with 20 or more. When a product with fewer ingredients outperforms products with more, it usually means those extra ingredients were never about cleaning. They were about presentation. Puracy Natural Dish Soap also earns an A from the EWG. It uses plant-based surfactants derived from coconut, discloses every ingredient on the label, and contains no 1004-dioxane, no synthetic fragrance, no dyes, and no parabens. The company was co-founded by a biochemist who designed the formula specifically to avoid the ingredient categories that carry health concerns. When someone who builds cleaning formulas for a living deliberately excludes the cheapest and most common surfactants in the industry, that is not marketing. That is a professional making a calculated decision that the risk profile of those ingredients does not justify their cost advantage. Eco's Dishmate rounds out the list as the most affordable entry point into genuinely cleaner dish soap. It carries EPA Safer Choice certification, meaning the EPA itself reviewed every ingredient in the formula and determined it meets its safety standards. Eco's manufactures in a carbon-neutral facility powered by renewable energy. The free and clear version uses no fragrance at all, and the scented versions use essential oils rather than synthetic blends. At a price point comparable to many conventional brands, Eco's removes the argument that safer dish soap is a luxury product. It is not. It is a choice that costs roughly the same per bottle. Now, it is important to acknowledge an honest limitation here. The dose makes the poison, and the amount of any single chemical you absorb from washing dishes on a given day is extremely small. No credible researcher is claiming that a single squirt of Dawn will give you cancer. The concern is cumulative, long-term, low-level exposure to compounds that interact with your body in ways that only become visible over years or decades. That is a harder case to make because the effects are subtle and the science is still evolving. The EWG's ratings are also not without criticism. Some toxicologists argue that the organization applies a more cautious standard than the data strictly supports, and that creating fear around trace-level contaminants can be misleading. That is a fair point, but the counter-argument is equally strong. When the EU restricts an ingredient that the US allows without limitation, and when independent lab testing confirms the presence of contaminants in product categories where no disclosure is required, the precautionary principle starts to look less like paranoia and more like common sense. The regulatory gap is real. The ingredient concerns are documented, and the alternatives exist at comparable price points. That is not ideology, it is math. So here is the question I want to leave you with. Go look under your kitchen sink right now, pick up whatever dish soap you have, and search its name on the EWG website. What grade did it get, and does that change what you will buy next time? Drop your answer in the comments, hit like if this video taught you something new, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, and I will see you in the next one.